Hi there, I'm Lorna Reeves of MyOhMy Events, and today I want to run through with you and the answer to a question that I've had, which is how do you encourage people to talk and interact in your Zoom meetings but still maintain control? This can be a tricky one, and I would love to share with you some hints and tips. So we'll mostly focus on Zoom, but the techniques work across Microsoft Teams, Adobe Connect, and many other platforms. First up, to maintain some semblance of control from the outset, I want you to jump over into your Zoom settings and dashboard, hit the settings button, and we want to control people from the minute they enter the room. And when I say control, I mean manage the conversation rather than control them. So we'd like our participants to join with video. So knock that on, and you want to make sure you join with video as well to promote that engagement. It really helps if you can see your delegates and participants before they start talking. They can start to give you non-verbal cues as to whether they want to ask a question or whether they want to engage. Spin down to mute participants on entry. This is really important that it's on. It will save you a lot of time and effort when you have 20 or 30 people joining a room all at the same time, and there's a lot of chatter and a lot of feedback and the dog's barking and there's kids in the background. So if you mute the participants on entry, it makes sure that the room is calm and relaxed before you get started. You will want to update your participants and just let them know that they have been muted, and this is for the purposes of keeping a clean audio. And if they want to unmute themselves to ask a question, please do so. This also gives them a little insight into the functionality of Zoom. So those are a couple of settings that you can have from managing from the outset. Let me just show you an in-Zoom tool that you might want to use as well. So here we've got, this is what Zoom looks like from a host perspective. And I always recommend as a host, the first two things that you do are to open up your chat box and then hit the Manage Participants button, which will bring you up this box over here. It means you can see everybody that's in the room, you can see who's muted and unmuted, and what I really like to do is I like to do an icebreaker at the beginning of the session and get people to drop, I don't know, one word about how they're feeling into the chat box. This shows connection and engagement, which is what we want from our sessions, but it also means that people can find the chat box, know where it is, and can start to interact in there. I always recommend having 2 people on a webinar if you've got a large group of people. Anything more than 8 becomes quite unmanageable. Keep them engaged and get them to comment in the chat box. Means that they're engaging in the session, they're interacting in the session, and you can keep an eye on what's going on, questions that are popping up, and general themes for how people are receiving the session. That's a great place to keep the general chitter chatter of I really like that point, or that really resonates with me, or I'm a little bit unclear of that, can you go over that again? So it's a good way of managing the conversation. There's also some really cool buttons in here, which you will have to activate in the non-verbal cues section. In here, you will see a setting that says non-verbal feedback, and you just want to toggle that on. And as soon as you do that, this is the panel that you will get. You get this panel over here that enables you to raise hands, answer yes or no, and there's a couple of other things in there, which is I'll be right back, and I need a break, so I need a tea break, different icons. And as soon as somebody raises a hand, that's an indication to you, and that will appear in here, an indication to you that somebody's got a question, they've got a point that they'd like to raise. So you can then say, hi John, I notice you've got your hand up. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? Or hi Pete, I notice you've got your thumbs up. Do you want to elaborate on what you liked about that point you just made? And it really gets people into a good habit of taking turns at speaking, so you don't get all of the chatter on top of yourself. Now, this is great for professional conversations. It gets people into really good habits and disciplines. If you're having a family quiz night, it might not necessarily work in the same way because you'll still get lots of chitter chatter. But if you're chairing a meeting, it's really good habit to get people into the habit of commenting, engaging in the chat box, and then raising a hand when they've got something they'd like to raise or they want to be unmuted. This means that you can control the flow of your slides, the flow of your sessions, and you can keep checking in with the chat box and the raised hands before you move on to a slightly different topic. And you can control the chat that's going on in the main room. It's striking that balance between being super interactive and not interrupting the flow of a session, so you get some really good quality and content out of it. If it's a team meeting, I would advocate for having an agenda. Really strongly recommend you get an agenda early, and you give each person that's going to be in the meeting a time slot or an order, so people know that Bert is going to be kicking off after the headlines at 10 o'clock, and then Sheila is at 10 past 10, or you just put them in an order so people know when it's their appropriate time to speak. And you remind people that some internet connections have a slight delay. So rather than speaking over the top of people, let people finish their point, and then they can chip in with a suggestion, an answer to a question, or a volunteer to help, whatever it might be. So having an agenda and having an order of speech is a really good way of keeping your team meetings controlled without all the chat on top of each other. And don't forget, as the person that's in control of the session, you have the ability over here to mute and unmute people. So if somebody forgets to mute themselves after they've asked a question and you can hear some scuffling or typing, just hit that button, hit their microphone, and you will mute them, and you can do that from here, which is why, again, I advocate getting some help if you're running a webinar or session of a large group of people. You really need somebody in the background to control who's being muted and unmuted and pick up the comments and questions that's in the chat box. So I hope that helps. A few hints and tips for how you can maintain control in your Zoom meetings and webinars, and you can control who's speaking at any one time, but still make sure you maintain that engagement. Any questions at all, please do let me know. Feel free to drop me comments and queries in the box here. We are offering online hosting services for a huge range of businesses, business owners, entrepreneurs, and really helping them connect with their audiences and serve their clients better. If you'd like to know more, drop me a line at lorna@myohmyevents.com, and I'll put the email link in the comments below. Have a wonderful day. Good luck implementing some of these, and I'll speak to you very soon. Take care.